Welcome back. Before we get started, make sure to subscribe to Retail Horror Stories. Hit the like button and drop a comment with where you're watching from and what time it is for you. That way, YouTube knows to keep showing you more stories like this. Now, let's begin. It was nearly 12:30 a.m. when Emma finally pulled her silver sedan into the Walmart parking lot. The air outside was colder than she expected for November in her small Midwestern town, and she could already see the faint shimmer of frost gathering on the edges of her windshield. Normally, Emma avoided going shopping this late. She worked long, grueling shifts as a nurse at the local hospital, and by the time her shift ended, all she wanted was to go home, shower, and collapse into bed. But tonight her fridge was almost empty, and the thought of waking up tomorrow without anything for breakfast made her grit her teeth, sigh, and take the detour to Walmart before heading home. The parking lot looked emptier than usual. Most of the cars were clustered near the far end, probably belonging to employees working the graveyard shift. The spaces near the entrance were wide open, but something about the way the tall, flickering fluorescent lights buzzed above the asphalt made the place feel desolate, like a stage after the actors had already left. Emma parked close to the store entrance, directly under one of the humming lights. As she shut off the car and stepped out, she felt the crisp air wrap around her, sharp against her tired body. She pulled her jacket tighter, balancing her purse against her hip, and glanced across the lot. That was when she first noticed it, a presence. At the edge of her vision, she thought she saw movement. She squinted, scanning the rows of parked cars, but saw nothing. Just shadows stretching long across the ground, shifting with the flicker of the lights. Her pulse quickened, but she told herself not to be ridiculous. It was late. She was tired. Of course, she was going to feel on edge walking through a nearly empty parking lot at midnight. Emma walked quickly toward the store. The automatic doors parted with a whoosh, and the warm blast of indoor air greeted her. Inside, the store felt cavernous. The bright lights overhead didn't make it feel safer. If anything, they made the emptiness more pronounced. Only a handful of employees were around, their yellow vests catching her eye from across the aisles. She heard the clatter of carts and the dull hum of an announcement over the intercom, but otherwise it was quiet. She moved through the store quickly, grabbing her groceries with the efficiency of someone who'd done this countless times. Milk, bread, eggs, a box of granola bars, and a frozen dinner or two. She didn't want to linger. Within 15 minutes, she was heading back out to the parking lot, her small bag of groceries clutched tightly in her hand. That's when the unease returned. The air outside felt heavier, colder. She stepped out onto the pavement and her eyes instinctively darted to the same row of cars she had looked at earlier. And this time, she wasn't imagining things. Someone was there. A man stood between two parked cars about 50 feet away. He wasn't moving, he wasn't talking on a phone, he wasn't carrying shopping bags, he was just watching her. Emma's stomach dropped. She tried to keep walking at a steady pace, not wanting to make it obvious that she had noticed him. She told herself maybe he was waiting for someone, an employee finishing their shift, perhaps. But when she risked a quick glance again, her heart hammered harder. He was still staring. His posture was unnervingly still, his head tilted slightly to one side as if studying her. The shadows around him made it impossible to see his face clearly, but she could make out the outline of a tall, thin frame, his arms hanging loosely at his sides. Emma's mind screamed at her to hurry. She walked faster, her keys already clutched in her fist. She reached her car and glanced back. The man was gone. Her breath caught. She spun around quickly, scanning the lot, Nothing, just the eerie hum of the lights above her, flickering, buzzing. Her throat felt dry as she unlocked the car door and threw her groceries onto the passenger seat. That's when she heard it. Footsteps. Slow. Heavy. Deliberate. The sound of rubber soles grinding against concrete. Emma's body froze. Every instinct told her not to turn around, but she couldn't help it. Her head twisted slowly, and her blood ran cold. The man was walking toward her. He was closer now, maybe 20 feet away, emerging from between the cars with deliberate steps. His face was partially hidden in shadow, but what she could see made her heart lurch. Pale skin, deep-set eyes that seemed too wide, and the faint outline of a grin stretched unnaturally across his face. Emma fumbled with her keys, scrambling into the driver's seat. She slammed the door shut, jammed the key into the ignition, and tried to start the car. Click. Click. The engine sputtered but didn't catch. The man reached her window. He leaned down slowly, his breath fogging the glass. Emma's chest tightened as she pressed herself back against the seat. He lifted one long, bony finger and tapped against the window. Tap, tap, tap. Emma's heart pounded like a drum in her ears. She tried the ignition again, nothing. The man tilted his head, his smile widening, though his eyes never blinked. He tapped again, harder this time, the sound echoing unnervingly through the empty lot. And then, in a raspy whisper, muffled through the glass, he spoke. "You shouldn't be out here alone." Emma's stomach lurched. She grabbed her phone from her purse, her trembling fingers unlocking it as she dialed 911. The moment she lifted the phone, the man straightened. He didn't run. He just stepped back slowly, one step at a time, before turning and melting into the shadows between the cars. Emma stayed frozen, the phone pressed to her ear, her entire body trembling. The dispatcher's voice on the other end asked what her emergency was, but Emma could barely speak. When the police arrived, they searched the lot, checked every row of cars, and even pulled footage from the store's security cameras. But the cameras showed nothing. No man, no figure approaching her car. Emma never went back to Walmart alone at night again. And sometimes, when she parks her car in dimly lit places, she swears she still hears it. The sound of a finger tapping against the glass. Tap, tap, tap. Marcus had gotten used to the rhythm of working nights at Walmart. He clocked in just before 10 p.m., grabbed a pallet jack, and spent hours wheeling loads of merchandise across the store to fill the empty shelves. Most nights blurred together in the same way. Boxes, shelves, tape cutters, repeat. But no matter how many shifts he worked, he never quite got used to the silence. Daytime Walmart was chaos. Customers shouting to each other, kids crying, announcements blasting from the intercom, carts rattling through every aisle. At night, it was the opposite. When the store closed to customers and only the skeleton crew of stalkers remained, the place seemed cavernous, the empty aisles stretching like tunnels. The only sounds were the buzz of fluorescent lights, the squeak of pallet jack wheels, and the occasional voice of a coworker that always felt too far away. That eerie silence made Marcus uneasy, though he'd never admit it out loud. It always felt like the building itself was alive, holding its breath, waiting. That night, he was assigned to the cereal aisle. He pushed a pallet stacked high with cereal boxes into position and set to work. The blade of his box cutter sliced through cardboard with practiced ease. He pulled open the flaps and began sliding boxes of Cheerios and Frosted Flakes onto the shelves. The repetition lulled him into a steady rhythm, until he felt it, that prickling sensation on the back of his neck, the undeniable feeling of being watched. Marcus froze, his hand still gripping a box of cereal midair. Slowly, he lifted his head and looked down the aisle. For a moment, he thought he saw someone. At the far end of the aisle, just past the last flickering light, stood a figure. Tall, thin, motionless. Marcus squinted, blinking hard. When his eyes adjusted, the figure was gone. The aisle was empty. He let out a shaky breath and chuckled nervously. Great. Already seeing things, he muttered. He went back to stalking, but the unease didn't fade. Every few minutes he'd glance over his shoulder, convinced he'd see the figure again. And eventually he did. This time it was clearer. A tall shape at the other end of the aisle. Not moving, not speaking, just standing there, watching. Marcus's chest tightened. "Hey," he called, his voice echoing far louder than he intended. "We're closed." "No customers in here." The figure tilted its head slightly, as if acknowledging him. Then the lights above flickered, just once, quick and sharp, and the figure was gone. Marcus swallowed hard. His palms were damp. He forced himself to keep working, though now his movements were hurried, jerky. He grabbed boxes without looking, stacking them carelessly. A voice broke the silence behind him. "Everything good, man." Marcus nearly jumped out of his skin. He spun around to see Derek, another stalker, leaning casually on his own pallet jack. "Jesus, Derek," Marcus snapped, clutching his chest. "Don't sneak up on me like that." Derek raised an eyebrow. "Sneak up?" "I was halfway down the aisle, dude. You didn't hear me at all?" Marcus shook his head, still rattled. "I thought I saw somebody down here." Derek chuckled. "Yeah, no kidding. I thought I saw someone once, too. This place'll mess with you if you let it. Just shadows and bad lighting." Marcus tried to laugh it off with him, but the tension in his chest didn't ease. Derek clapped him on the shoulder. "Take a break if you need to." "I'll cover." Marcus nodded, grateful, and wandered toward the employee break room. He sat at one of the scratched plastic tables, sipping water from the vending machine. The hum of the soda machine and the flickering fluorescent bulb above should have been ordinary sounds, but somehow they felt too loud, like they were trying to drown something else out. After 10 minutes, he forced himself back to work. He didn't want to give Derek the satisfaction of calling him jumpy. When Marcus returned to the cereal aisle, his pallet jack was where he left it, but the boxes he had stacked neatly on the shelves weren't neat anymore. They were scattered across the floor. Cereal boxes lay toppled, some crushed, others flung several feet from the pallet. Marcus froze. His eyes darted around. "Derek?" "Not funny, man." Silence. He bent down and started gathering the boxes, trying to convince himself it was a prank. But as he stacked the last one onto the shelf, he heard it. A whisper. Faint, distant. His name. Marcus. He spun around so fast he nearly fell. "Who's there?" Nothing. Just the aisle. Empty as before. His pulse thundered in his ears. He gritted his teeth, muttered a curse, and grabbed his pallet jack. He wasn't about to stick around the cereal aisle any longer. He wheeled the pallet toward the main walkway and froze again, because standing directly under the flickering light ahead was the figure. Closer now. Marcus's stomach dropped. His throat went dry. The figure was tall, Impossibly so, its arms dangling too low, its head still tilted at that unnatural angle. Its face wasn't clear, blurred as though the light refused to touch it. Marcus couldn't move. His legs felt like stone. The figure raised one long arm, slowly, deliberately, and pointed straight at him. The light above flickered violently, buzzing, stuttering, and in the split-second darkness, the figure was gone. Marcus's breathing came in shallow gasps. He abandoned the pallet, sprinting down the main walkway toward the break room. His footsteps echoed like thunder. He burst through the door, startling Derek, who looked up from his phone. "Dude, what the hell?" Derek asked. "There's someone in the store," Marcus panted. "I saw them. They were right there. They pointed at me." Derek frowned. "Man, there's nobody here. I've been up front for the last 20 minutes. The doors are locked." Marcus shook his head furiously. "I'm telling you, I saw it. I'm not crazy." Derek raised his hands in surrender. All right. I'll check the cameras." They went to the security office together. Derek pulled up the feed from the main walkway. The timestamp showed the exact moment Marcus swore he saw the figure. But the camera showed nothing. Just Marcus, pushing his pallet, then freezing, staring at nothing. Marcus's blood ran cold. "See?" Derek said. "Nothing there. Just you." Marcus left the store that morning, shaken. He couldn't get the image out of his head. The tall figure, the tilt of its head, the way it pointed at him like it was choosing him for something. When he got home, exhausted, he tossed his jacket onto the couch and collapsed into a chair. He told himself it was stress, a trick of the lights. He just needed sleep. But when he looked at the couch again, his stomach flipped. On top of his jacket sat a single box of Cheerios, the same kind he had stocked that night. Marcus stared at it, frozen. His mind scrambled for an explanation. Maybe he accidentally carried it out. Maybe Derek planted it as a joke. Then the lights in his apartment flickered. Once, twice, and from the hallway, he heard it again. "Marcus." The same whisper. The same voice. The figure had followed him home. I didn't believe in haunted retail. I believed in shrinkage and miscounts and teenagers pocketing earbuds. I was the night manager, and my world ran on numbers. Tills balanced, doors locked, cameras rolling. The first time I noticed anything off was a Tuesday in February, when the wind got under the automatic doors and whistled like a kettle. We were short-staffed, again, so I watched the monitors while a new cashier, Lila, worked the late lanes. At 12:17 a.m., a motion alert pinged on checkout 5. I glanced over and saw Lila scanning items. Nobody stood in front of her. No cart, no stroller, just Lila moving like the place was packed. She lifted a loaf-shaped nothing off the belt, tilted it toward the scanner and set it in a bag. Then another and another. The scanner didn't beep. In the audio, there was only fluorescent hum, but her wrists moved with that cashier rhythm, and she nodded toward empty air as if answering a question. I told myself the feed had frozen and a customer had slipped out of frame. I pressed rewind, then play. Same thing. Lila alone. She angled the card reader, waited, then eased it back. When she finished, the printer churned and spat a receipt. She tore it, handed it into the air, and said, clear enough for the mic to catch, "Have a good night." I called her extension. "Everything okay out there?" A pause. "Yes, sir." Just finishing up." "Finishing what?" "The last guest," she said, as if that explained anything. When she walked past the office, I waved her in and spun the monitor. She studied the frame of her empty lane, expression flat. "He comes late," she said. "He's polite. Pays cash. It smells like rain when he's here." I waited for a smile that never came. After she left for break, I printed the receipt journal. At 12:19 a.m., the system had recorded a transaction. Subtotal $0.00, tax $0.00, cash tendered $5, change due $5. No item lines, no voids, no overrides. The drawer opened and closed. The tape didn't lie. It also didn't make sense. The next night, I posted myself at the end of checkout 5. I stood where a customer would stand so I could be what the camera couldn't catch. Midnight bled into 12:17, and the air shifted. Lila's gaze lifted as if to meet eyes. Her shoulders softened into customer service posture. She guided invisible items down the belt. Her scanner stayed mute, but her rhythm steadied. Lift, tilt, set. "Find everything okay?" she asked to the space beside me. The heat lamps over the rotisserie case across the aisle made a wavering shimmer at the edge of my vision. That's all it was, I told myself. Shimmer. Nothing more. "Cash or card?" Lila asked. Silence, but not empty. "Cash," she answered herself. She popped the till. The drawer slid out. She slid her hand through air that fought around her fingers, placed a bill inside, and counted change into her palm. Then she turned her hand over, and this is the part that bent the world. Pennies clinked against nothing, stacked on nothing, hovered for a single bright heartbeat, and dropped together into the waiting bag. I didn't move. You don't interrupt gravity when it forgets itself. She pressed the receipt forward. The paper bent around absence. Something brushed my sleeve, light, careful, and tugged toward the exit. "Good night," Lila said softly. "See you tomorrow." We stood there after, eyes on a spot none of the cameras could see. The journal printed the same impossible sale. I checked the drawer. A 5 lay there that wasn't ours, worn thin, damp, smelling of rain. I would have filed a ticket with corporate about camera interference and moved on, except the receipts kept printing at the same time every night. When I tried disabling the lane early, the light above it flickered until I turned it back on. On the 5th night, I brought an old Polaroid from home. No compression, no firmware, just chemistry and light. "May I try something?" I asked the air, and surprised myself with the politeness. At 12:17, the temperature dropped until I saw my breath. I aimed at the chrome rail where hands rest and fired the flash. The picture slid out and bloomed in my palm. When the fog cleared, there were handprints on the rail. Condensation. 10 ovals pressed from the wrong side of air. I didn't show the district. We kept the photo in a drawer the way you keep a secret in a family. Not because you're ashamed, but because you'd have to explain everything that lives around it. On the 7th night, Lila called in sick. I covered her lane. Midnight came and went. 12:17 brushed past like a draft from a door that didn't open. Relief loosened something in my chest until 12:19, when the printer started by itself. A blank receipt fed and cut. It lifted on its own, tugging against my fingers as if someone took it politely. The drawer popped. Weight shifted inside, $5 in, 5 out. Coins moved where I could not see them. "Have a good night," I said to habit or hope. The overhead music changed to a prom song from a decade ago. When Lila returned, she looked smaller in her vest. I dream about his groceries, she said. They aren't things we sell. A box the size of a loaf, but it's heavy as a brick. A jar that smells like wet pennies. A paper sack that stains your fingers like rainwater. I saw the receipt print by itself, I told her. I heard the coins. She nodded like that was expected. He pays for what he owes. That's why he can come. You think he's stuck? I think he keeps a promise, she said. Stuck is different. A week later, loss prevention flagged our $0 transactions, and corporate sent a district auditor in a suit the color of the copy room. He watched the tapes and called it a glitch. Encoder drift, he said. Firmware bug, replace the head unit. Why does the drawer pop on a glitch? I asked. Mechanical fault. Why does the receipt exist? He pinched the bridge of his nose. Destroy them. It's a liability. That night, the light above Checkout 5 burned steady, the lane quiet as a chapel. For the first time since this began, nothing happened. I almost believed we had broken the loop. When I locked up at 4, a manila folder sat square on my office chair, not tossed, placed. Inside, the top receipt had a neat line through the date. Above it, in a careful hand, someone had written, paid. I checked the drawer where we kept the Polaroid. It was slightly ajar. I closed it and turned the key. On my way out, I paused at Checkout 5 and laid my palm on the chrome rail. It came away damp, as if someone had just been leaning there, waiting his turn like everyone else. I don't know what I believe about haunted retail. I believe in routines. So, every night at 12:17, whether the printer stirs or not, I make sure the lane light is on. We keep a 5 folded under the drawer and 3 pennies on the counter. Lila says it's courteous to have exact change ready when you know a guest's order by heart. Sometimes the pennies slide toward the bag on their own. Sometimes they don't. Either way, the doors stay locked, the tills balance, and the world makes just enough sense to go home. And if the wind whistles under the automatic doors like a kettle, if the music nudges itself to a song nobody picked, if the chrome rail blooms with prints from the wrong side of the air, we don't page maintenance. We ring it up. We tell him good night. We'll be here tomorrow. So will he. I lost my wife and son somewhere between serial and seasonal, which sounds ridiculous in a store I've walked 100 times. Sunday afternoon, bright and busy. Alyssa wanted a candle that smelled like clean laundry. Noah wanted blue dinosaur pajamas, and I wanted to get in and out before the game. We split at the main intersection. Alyssa veered toward Home Goods with Noah riding the cart rail. I promised paper towels and a quick meetup by electronics. 10 minutes became 12. Electronics blinked and hummed. But there was no Alyssa, no Noah. I texted, "At TV's." She replied, "We're by Candles." "Meet me at the carts?" I cut back through toys and walked into hardware. Candles weren't where candles should be. An aisle number I knew by heart sat over hoses and sprinklers. I backed up, tried another turn, and ran into paint, then nails, then more hardware that kept going. The store had stretched. That was the only way my brain could say it, longer than the building allowed. I doubled back to the main walkway that anchors every Walmart from groceries to front end. Except when I followed it, the registers didn't arrive. More aisles did. I called Alyssa. Straight to voicemail. Again. Voicemail like the phone had learned a new trick. Where did they move candles? I asked a woman with a squeaky cart. They didn't, she said without slowing, and the words slid in my head like a marble on glass. I clung to noise, carts, kids, overhead music. I kept the cart I'd grabbed without thinking, and pushed toward whatever sounded like people. Grocery signs promised bread to the left and dairy ahead, but left gave me bedding, and ahead delivered toys, where the same deflated beach ball sagged exactly where I'd seen one earlier. Either the store had 2 identical beach balls in the same slump, or I had looped. I texted again, at the front. Where are you? The message bubbled blue, then gray, then nothing. I pocketed the phone and found my fingers white around the cart handle. That was when I saw the receipt taped to the child's seat. It had my name across the top, M-A-T-T, handwritten in tidy block letters, not the loyalty footer. The item list didn't have UPCS or prices, just 1 candle, 1 pair of pajamas, blue dinosaur, 1 paper towels, 1 way out. Subtotal, 0.00. Tax, 0.00. A barcode at the bottom looked less like lines and more like a small black window. Okay, I said, because sound felt like friction. Okay. I peeled the tape and pocketed the slip. Then I picked a direction and stuck to it. I ignored the lying signs and the aisles that repeated with millimeter errors, a missing scuff, a new dent, and aimed for what had to be the front. I sniffed for Subway. I watched for a greeter's vest. I looked for sunlight on glass. I found DVDS, $5 bins, 3 islands of them. Twice I passed them. The third time, a title I'd never seen sat on top. Exit, the cover a pair of sliding doors reflecting an empty lot. I didn't touch it. I turned and nearly rammed a tipped-over cart. Groceries spilled in a neat mess. Cereal avalanche, single jar of pickles, a roll of the exact paper towels I meant to buy. A candle lay on its side, lit off, wax pale. Fresh cotton, the bottom sticker said. I lifted it and inhaled. Clean laundry. Noah? The name was out before I knew I'd spoken. A wheel squeaked ahead. I pushed toward it. The aisles tightened the way hallways do in dreams. The shelves seemed taller. The light cooled. My cart developed a wobble that thumped in time with my pulse. I passed picture frames. Every stock photo showed my family. Alyssa, me, Noah, in a park we'd never visited, our clothes not ours, our smiles close enough to hurt. In one, Noah held up a receipt like a flag. The top read M-A-T-T. I reached, and a frame tipped off on its own, cracking down the middle. The ceiling speakers hiccuped. Music cut. A tone sounded, then a second lower one. My phone buzzed. Carts, her text read. I followed my nose for metal and found a nested line near glass doors. No greeter, no crowd. Outside was fog. I slid my cart into the line. It resisted, then clicked. A self-check screen lit at my elbow, black except for a blinking cursor. The receipt printer cut a single slip that curled and dropped. I caught it. It matched the one in my pocket. Total 0. Tax 0. The bottom square of ink reflected like an eye. Okay, I said again. The doors didn't open. I pushed. Glass shivered. Cool, damp air leaked through. Sir, someone said. A young associate stood by the anti-theft towers, vest crooked, name tag E-L-I-S-E. Her walkie hissed, though no one spoke. I can't get out, I said. My wife and son. Carts, she said, nodding. You have to take the right one. They're the same. Not now, I scanned handles. Fifth from the front, a blue one was worn to white where palms grip. The child strap was tied in the loose knot Alyssa uses when she refuses to fight a buckle. I freed it. It was heavier than it should have been. In the basket under the seat lay blue dinosaur pajamas, a candle with its lid loose, and a roll of paper towels that slid forward as if relieved. "You'll need the receipt," Elise said. "It's in the cup holder," I said, and when I checked, it was. "Push steady," she said. "Don't look to the sides." "What happens if I do?" "You'll be back in electronics." I lined the cart with the rubber threshold. My palms were slick. I pictured Noah's cowlick, Alyssa humming, a game I didn't need anymore. I pushed. The doors sighed and opened into fog that swallowed sound. Something in the store pulled at me. My eyes tugged right toward an end cap stacked with exit DVDs, toward promising aisles with no exits. I kept my gaze on the mat. Steady. The wheels bumped a seam. Then I was outside. Afternoon pressed my shoulders. The lot shimmered. Traffic murmured. The world had been paused and someone hit play. Alyssa waved from 3 cars down. Noah bounced beside her in blue dinosaurs that fit. The candle rode their cart's cup holder, lid off, wax pale and unburned. "You took forever," she said, laughing, as if time matched on both sides of the glass. "I got turned around," I said. Noah held out a receipt. It was warm. Across the top, block letters spelled my name. The bottom line read, "One way out." I folded it into my wallet, where it sits like a map I only needed once. On Sundays, when we pass carts, I count to the 5th and look for a blue handle worn to white. Some days it's there, some days it isn't, I don't pull it free. That night, I lit the candle. The house filled with clean laundry and a faint damp smell, like a store door opening on rain. I turned on the game and off again. The black square at the bottom of the receipt still caught light like an eye. If I dream of aisles that bend and repeat, I wake, count to 5, and know which cart to choose. If I lose them again, I'll pay the same total, 0 for the things, everything for the way out. Rosa never slept on her breaks. 7 years on overnights taught her that if you closed your eyes in the break room, the building pressed in and time slipped out from under you. She microwaved soup, scrolled her phone, and kept one foot hooked around the chair leg like an anchor. 15 minutes, never 16. That's what she told new hires. Keep it to 15. The break room sat behind a gray door past the clocks and dented lockers. Flyers on the corkboard, a TV muted to headlines, a fridge everyone swore they'd clean this week, fluorescent tubes that hummed too loud, air that smelled like burned popcorn and old coffee. On Tuesday, Rosa's second break hit at 2 a.m. She swiped her badge, the clock chirped, and she pushed in with a styrofoam cup of chicken noodle. The far light flickered, just once, like it had been waiting. One chair sat pulled out at the table by the TV, angled slightly from the wall. She paused, listening for a coworker. Nothing. Just the hum and the soft rattle of an ice maker behind the wall. "Hello?" she called, more to be polite to the room than because she expected an answer. She set the soup in the microwave and punched 3 o'clock. The carousel whined to life. Her radio crackled on her hip, then cleared. Rosa sat and kept her foot around the leg. She liked to face the door. The chair across from her, pulled back more than usual, stayed empty. She set her phone on the table, timer running. Someone exhaled in the corner by the lockers. Rosa didn't jerk. Nights teach you to move slow. She lifted her eyes and let them slide. Only a square of darker shadow where the light didn't reach. No outline, no person. Just the breath, soft, steady, like someone trying not to bother her. 15, said a paper-thin voice near the vending machine. Not the radio. To her right, the soda display blinked 0.00, then paid, then 0.00 again, as if a free vend couldn't decide. "It's okay," Rosa said. "I'm on time." The microwave hiccuped. Her soup smell rolled out, salt, bouillon, a whisper of dill. Under it came something colder, wet metal, coins after rain. She slid the empty chair in a little with her heel, a reflex to make room in case someone did want to sit. The vinyl gave a slow whisper like breath against a pillow. Her badge lanyard felt heavy against her neck. "Don't nap," she said, filling the room with her own voice. "You'll miss your punch." Her radio crackled, wind at the edge of a door. From the hallway, something rolled past, the rubber hush of a pallet jack, but nobody called out. The breathing deepened. Not closer, fuller, like whoever made it finally let the air all the way in. The chair across eased another inch, unhelped by hands she could see. A vibration thrummed through the laminate under her palm. The whole building with a pulse. She glanced at the wall clock over the corkboard. 2:17 read second-hand still. It didn't advance. Her phone said 2:05. The microwave said 1:46. 15, the thin voice said again, apologizing. The soda machine thunked a can behind its door. Nobody had pressed a button. The label wore an old logo they didn't stock anymore, colors peeled to a ghost. Rosa pulled the can free, ice-cold damp. She set it on the table between the two chairs like an offering. The opposite chair eased in another inch, as if knees had moved closer. "Okay," she said, "we'll count together." The far fixture flickered 2 short, 1 long. When it steadied, the TV had changed to the in-store channel, looping B-roll of smiling associates and clean end caps, but the captions were wrong. Names, dates, clock-in times. 10:02, 12:17, 00:15. 15 kept showing up like a reminder written in different hands. Rosa lifted a napkin from the holder and set it neatly by the can. The sharp, quiet feeling in her chest was the one she'd had at her grandmother's table when a plate went down for someone no longer living. Not fear. Attention. Acknowledge who's here, and they'll behave like guests, not like thieves. "What would you like?" she asked the corner. "Soup or soda?" The breath stuttered. The chair made a small sound, like someone leaning on their elbows. The can hissed. The pull tab rose a fraction, then lay flat again. "You're the one who keeps time," the thin voice said, so faint she could have blamed Fizz. 15. The microwave beeped. She stirred to put heat back where it had left the edges. The wall clock still read 2:17. Her phone said 2:08. The radio drew a long inhale and held it. She ate 2 spoonfuls. The chair across scraped quick and cross, the way an irritated person shifts. For half a blink, the microwave door reflected 2 silhouettes at the table. "Why here?" Rosa asked. "Why this room?" The answer came as a gentle push of air lifting the napkin's edge. The corkboard was crowded with schedules and flyers, but under the papers the cork showed a coin-scratched circle, then a smaller circle inside, smaller, down to a dot. 15, the voice said, almost ashamed. "Fell asleep." missed the punch. Got coached for it? Rosa asked with a short laugh. 3 minutes and they act like you robbed the place. The breath lightened, relieved to be talking about something ordinary. The can slid a 1/4 inch and left a wet comet trail. The door handle rattled. Rosa looked over. The push bar had engaged when she came in. The latch usually didn't catch. Now the bolt sat hard in the jam. She pushed. No give. She worked the handle. Nothing. Her radio flared with the front-end channel. Voices that should have been a building away, laughing, then static. She leaned her shoulder into the door. It wouldn't move. Her timer rolled past 10 o'clock. The wall clock still said 2:17. The microwave blinked : as if it had forgotten its numbers. Behind her, chair legs squeaked. She turned. The opposite chair tucked itself in, neat, as if to say we're done. In the microwave's gloss, the table reflected 2 cups, 2 napkins, 1 can. 2 chairs at the same polite slant. For a beat, deeper than light, a vest hung on a shoulder that wasn't hers. "Can I go back?" Rosa asked the room. "I don't want to be late." The breath hitched and eased out, like someone finally set down something heavy. The latch thunked. The push bar loosened under her hand. "Thank you," she said. She didn't take the can. She moved sideways and pulled the door with her shoulder turned, the way you do when somebody is sleeping and you don't want the light to wake them. In the hall, the time clock said 2:15 when she swiped. Her phone said 2:15. The wall clock inside ticked once, the red second hand, landing at 2:16 for the first time all night. Back on the floor, Dev yelled from paper goods, "Rosa, you take too long? App'll coach us all if you keep soaking up break room air." 15, she called back, and the way the word left her mouth raised the hairs on her arm. Her badge felt damp, like she'd walked through fog. In her vest pocket, she found 4 quarters she hadn't had when she went in, warm from a palm, not hers. The dates were old. At 3:45, a new kid, Janelle, slumped into the break room and came out 20 minutes later, eyes red. "I must have fallen asleep," she said. "I swear it was only 5. "Set a timer," Rosa told her. "Face the door. Keep a chair pulled out for a guest. If the soda machine gives you something you didn't pay for, say thank you and leave it." "Why?" Janelle asked. "So he doesn't have to get up," Rosa said, smiling like it was a harmless superstition. She finished her shift with the skin on her neck cool. On her way out, she slipped a fresh can on the table and tucked a sticky note under it. The number 15 written neat as a badge ID. When she turned the lights off, the far fixture flickered once, courteous as a nod, and went dark. I work the overnight security loop at our Walmart. Doors, docks, carts, repeat. The lot has its own weather at 2 in the morning. Light like a fake moon, humming concrete, fog that crawls in off the highway and sits low over row F. The sedan started showing up in November under the dead light in the northeast corner. Old model, dark paint, windows fogged from the inside. When I swept my beam across the driver's seat, I'd see a shape. When I got close enough to tap the glass, the seat was empty and damp, as if someone had just stood up. The passenger side was always covered in receipts. Loss prevention told me to log it and not engage. "Lot ghosts," Gary said. "Call if there's movement." He made me repeat movement, like policy could anchor a thing you can't touch. On the 5th night, I went out early. The corner was empty. I faced the space and waited. When I turned to check the store, the car was suddenly there. No engine, no lights, just present, fog stitched around it like a hem. I cupped my hands to the glass. Receipts littered the seat, our logo, but older, our hours, but wrong. The top slip had a name written across the header in block letters, C-A-L. Only my sister calls me that. The item list didn't show UPCS. It said things that felt like a dare: one cart, one way out, one promise kept. I tried the handle before I decided to. It opened. "Sir," I said to the cold air. Lots closed. Silence pressed against my ears. The paper felt thicker than ours, cool as if it held weather. One receipt listed customer, Calvin Morales, my full name, the one I haven't used since I was a kid. And below it, price, 0.00. Tender, cash, change, 0.0. I put it back like it could bruise. Sitting in the driver's seat felt like sitting in a memory. Same vinyl as my friend's dad's car back when we got caught lifting candy here. A P walked us to the back. The manager didn't call the cops. He stood in the doorway with a gray tie and kind eyes and said, "Sometimes you pay for what you take. Sometimes you pay back." Later, I said thank you like a vow and meant it for years. Back at the sedan, the receipts settled without wind. The timestamps matched my loop. 2:11 when I checked garden, 2:33 when I stopped for coffee. The car knew my shift better than I did. I set a cone behind the rear tire so I'd know if it moved. By the time I finished my doors and came back, the cone rested on the passenger seat with the receipts. My radio coughed and went quiet. We pulled the feeds in LP. On the monitors, my flashlight cut a triangle through fog. Where the car should have been, the camera showed only mist breathing in and out. Gary frowned and said, "Encoder drift." I didn't argue. You can't show somebody what won't let itself be recorded. After that, I began leaving things. A fresh roll of receipt paper, gone by morning. The tail printed with a total of 0.00. A quarter from 1999, the year they caught us, swapped for a different quarter. Edges softened the way coins get in wet pockets. I kept that one. One night, I set a free coffee coupon from the break room on the dash. In the morning, a coffee ring had dried around it, perfect as a stamp, though nobody had been in the car I could see. My sister texted on a fog night, "You working?" I typed back, "Yeah," and didn't add that the old name on the receipts made my stomach feel like I'd swallowed a key. She sent a picture of our mother's altar with a candle lit and a plate of pan dulce under it. "For the people who helped," she wrote. I didn't tell her I was sitting in a dark lot, watching fog turn the world into a room small enough to understand. On the coldest night, the space was empty again. Relief loosened my knees. Then someone on the far side of the car that wasn't there cleared his throat. The polite kind, the "I'm about to ask you a favor." I hate to ask kind. The sedan eased into view, more revealed than arriving. "What do you want me to do?" I asked, hand flat on the roof. The metal pulsed with warmth from an engine that didn't exist. A receipt slid out from the stack and lay by my fingers. Customer, Calvin Morales. Item, one promise kept. Price, 0.00. Tender, cash. Change, 0.00. Beneath, in handwriting almost like mine if I wrote slower, paid. I folded that slip into my wallet where my license should have been. The windshield fogged over like a bathroom mirror. My face went soft and then vanished. I stepped back and the cone I hadn't placed yet thunked my ankle, sitting where I'd left it earlier as if it had completed a small, private loop. For a week after that, the sedan didn't appear. The dead light stayed dead. The corner camera still fogged when the air got heavy and cleared when the wind moved. I walked the edge of the lot anyway, habit and something like respect bringing me there. Palm grazing the cold cart handles, breath counting itself in front of my face. On the 8th night, as I cut past the garden center, I saw an umbrella leaning against the outside wall, cheap black, still dripping, though no rain had fallen. I propped it in the vestibule for whoever had left it. When I came back an hour later, it stood in the northeast corner space under the dead light, open, shading nothing. The fog around it moved like lace in water. I took it to the office without opening it, and we all pretended it belonged to inventory. Once, around 3, I called the non-emergency police line because doing nothing all the time felt like a lie. The operator asked for a plate. I read her the smudges. She asked make and model. I said old. She asked if I could approach the vehicle safely. Yes, I said, and meant no. She told me to recontact if the situation escalated. I thanked her and hung up, and watched the fog write my breath in the air in front of me like a speech bubble with nothing useful inside. The next shift, a $5 bill lay on the passenger seat of the sedan, our current till strap around it like it had been counted, and a penny from 1978 sat on top, bright as if freshly dropped in a bowl. The receipt on the stack read, tender, cash. Change, 0.01. I put the penny in my pocket, and it burned like it had been warmed under a hand. I thought about the manager with the gray tie and the door to the back room, and how his eyes made me want to be better, not just behave. If he had asked me to pay right then, I could have. He asked me to pay later, and later turned out to be a long loop under a dead light, polite as rain. I don't bother Gary with it anymore. If I need to explain a gap in my loop, I say, fog on the camera, and he nods like we're speaking the same language. Sometimes, when he leaves for the night, he puts a cone in the northeast corner out of habit, a small orange blessing that means nothing and helps. On my nights off, I drive past out of habit and don't turn in. In daylight, that space is nothing. Cracked asphalt, 2 little trees the city-made Walmart plant, gum flattened into coins the color of old receipts. You'd never believe it can hold a car and a weight if you haven't stood there when the fog sits up and pays attention. If you ever park under that dead light and smell wet paper, check your passenger seat. If there's a receipt with your name and a total that doesn't make sense, leave it. Some things you don't ring up. Some things you keep folded where your ID should be. Proof for no one. Reminder for you. And if a manager ever tells a stupid kid that he'll pay back later, know that later doesn't always look like a courtroom or a fine. Sometimes it waits in a corner space and asks only that you keep watch, count your doors, and remember what was owed. On good nights, the fog thins, and the dead light thinks about coming on and doesn't, and the lot breathes like a sleeping thing that trusts you for now. It wasn't even that late, just after 8, when I ran into Walmart for a last-minute birthday gift. I babysit for the Parkers every Thursday, and Ellie, 5 and solemn as a judge, had declared she wanted a doll that talks back. Her mom texted anything with a dress, nothing that wakes us at 2 a.m. Easy enough, the toy aisle was a migraine of color. One fluorescent tube kept hiccuping, light, shadow, light, so the shelves strobed as I walked. I stopped at a wall of dolls with glassy eyes and tidy braids. "Talk back friends," the box said. A sticker promised repeats what you say. The demo model chirped, hello, and a heartbeat later, hello, again in a tinny echo. "Perfect," I said, and reached for the cheaper version 2 shelves down. Then I hesitated. The electronic shelf label under the row didn't show SKU or price. For a blink, it showed ELLIE in cold blue. When I blinked back, it was $24.88 again, like I'd imagined it. I slid a box from the middle. The doll rolled its painted eyes up and caught mine. I know that's what dolls do when you tilt them, but the movement felt immediate, like meeting someone's gaze when you aren't ready. I laughed at myself and picked a different one that said Sophia on the tag. Into the basket it went. At self-checkout, the scanner refused to see my doll. The red line slid across the barcode and the screen stayed stubborn. I keyed the number, the keypad beeped and rejected it. The attendant, vest slightly crooked, hour 9 of 10, tapped a code. The register flashed merch credit, $0.00, and printed a receipt. "Do I owe?" I asked. "You're fine," she said, tucking the box deeper into my bag. The Parker's porch light flared when I rang. Ellie padded to the door in socks, hair escaping its braid. "Maya!" she beamed. "Did you bring my present?" "Close your eyes," I said. I set the bag on the coffee table and teased tissue aside. When she opened them, the doll's eyes were already open, fixed on her. Ellie made a small private sound. "She looks like she knows me," she said. "Her name is Sophia," I said, showing the tag. It did say Sophia. I swear it did. Ellie pressed the belly. "My name is Ellie," she said. "My name is Ellie," the doll replied in Ellie's exact cadence, the same little catch on L. Ellie giggled and tucked the doll under her chin. After a cartoon, Ellie insisted, "Sophia, okay, Ellie, the doll, sleep on the pillow beside her. She watches better if she can see," Ellie explained. I shifted the doll an inch so she wouldn't roll onto Ellie's face. When I tilted the head, the glass eyes stayed on me for one extra breath, before dropping where gravity wanted them. In the blue wash of the baby monitor, the whites held light too long. Back in the living room, I looked at the receipt. No item lines, just a single name where curbside orders usually print. ELLIE. Total $0.00. At the bottom, where the barcode should be, a black rectangle so glossy it reflected the lamp. The monitor purred white noise with a thin seam of melody. I nudged the volume up. In that seam, faint and exact, Maya in Ellie's voice. I reached toward the hallway switch and the monitor went quiet. When I pulled my hand back, the seam returned and added softer, "Found you?" I went down the hall. Ellie slept, one hand on the doll's dress. The doll's eyes were 3/4 closed like they're supposed to be when a doll lies flat, but it looked less like shut eyes and more like pretending. A faint scent clung to the pillow. Powder, plastic, and laundry after rain. "Battery compartment?" I whispered, because doing a practical thing keeps a room ordinary. On the back panel there was a screw, and no seam. The screw was molded plastic, uncut. Ellie murmured dream talk and turned her cheek deeper into the pillow. The doll's eyes slid a fraction, as if to keep her in view. In the kitchen, I texted Ellie's mom. "Heads up, doll is maybe too talky. Might move it if it keeps her up. Bubbles, then no bubbles." I looked at the box on the counter. The paper name tab I'd skimmed, Sophia, didn't say Sophia anymore. It said ELLIE, the letters inside the paper, not ink on top. "Okay," I said to the room. I packed the doll into the box and taped it shut with blue painter's tape. When I set the box by the door, A loose shelf tag slid across the table by itself and tucked under the tape seam, as if it wanted in. I slept on the couch and woke to whispers that could have been the fridge or the monitor. Once I heard my name the way Ellie says it when she's scared and trying not to be. I almost went in. I didn't. Morning made everything ordinary again. Ellie patted out and blinked at the box. "Where's Sophia?" "We'll exchange her," I said lightly. "Get one that doesn't copy you so perfectly." "She didn't copy," Ellie said. "She said, I found you first." Daylight made the toy aisle normal. The shelf label blinked price, then, just once, Ellie, then price again. I flagged the attendant from last night. "Exchange?" I asked, offering the box. "We don't carry this model," she said automatically, then actually looked and her smile stiffened. She scanned my receipt. The gun beeped a flat denial. On the screen, there was only a name. Ellie. Total $0. "Store credit?" I asked. "Keep it," she said, voice suddenly human. "Sometimes they follow kids home no matter what you do." "I don't want her to follow," I said. "Then don't say her name," she said, like a policy instead of a superstition. I carried the box to the car. The tape lifted with a soft pop. The flap rose. The doll's eyes were open. The paper name inside didn't say ELLIE anymore. It said Maya, neat and blue, as if the shelf had only ever been telling the truth one person at a time. I buckled the box and took the long way back. At the first red light, the speaker crackled. "Maya," Ellie's exact voice said, then lengthened into something that wasn't a copy at all. "Don't be scared," it said. "I just wanted someone to talk back." I pulled into the Parkers' driveway and sat with the engine off. Through the window, Ellie stood on the couch with her palm on the glass, not waving, waiting. I took the box to the door. The speaker had fallen quiet. A hint of clean laundry moved through the seam as if the box had its own weather. I didn't say hers, I didn't say mine. I just knocked, and when the door opened, the doll lifted its hand, palm out, greeting the exact person it had been looking for all along. I only needed one bag of soil. That's what I told the greeter as I jogged toward the garden center. It was 9:56 p.m., 4 minutes to close. The greenhouse doors whispered open and exhaled peat and damp metal. I'd promised my mom I'd plant rosemary on my sister's birthday. Rosemary for remembrance. One bag, in and out, then a midnight planting so it would feel like a kept promise, not a chore. At night, the garden center's its own store. Cage roof, glass walls, aisles of potting mix and terracotta. A kid in a yellow vest rolled down the steel gate on the store side. "We close in 4, he called without looking. I pointed at a pallet. He nodded and kept rolling. I grabbed a 50-quart bag, too big, but it was what they had, and heaved it into a cart. The misters came on in the hanging basket aisle, stitching fog between ferns. I hit the help button at the register. The red light blinked, then died. Behind the gate, the store lights dimmed to night mode. "Self-check then," I said, and turned toward the parking lot exit. The latch was thrown. The bar said, "Push to open," and I pushed. Nothing. Outside turned to a flat black mirror. I could see myself, tired face, damp collar, the soil a lump in the cart like a sleeping animal. "Hey!" I called toward the store-side gate. A woman in a vest walked by inside, head down, counting bills. I waved. She didn't look up. Signal dropped. The metal net and chain link made a Faraday cage. I was alone with damp and hum. I tried the lot door again. That's when I noticed the rake handles on the floor. When I'd come in, the tools hung in neat rows. Now, 4 wooden ends lay across the threshold like someone had slid them down to bar it. A coil of hose had rolled itself against the lower seam and sat there, green as a sleeping snake. "I saw you put those there," I said to nobody. I lifted the handles. They were colder than the air. When I set them aside, the hose twitched, as if remembering a different shape. The misters clicked off. Water ticked from leaves. The glow warmed toward dusk, though the sky outside was night. I pushed the cart toward the gate. Halfway there, a rolling rack of succulents eased from an aisle and slid sideways, turning a straight shot into a narrow S. I backed up to go around. A stack of terracotta trays tipped and clacked down, brick red teeth making a low fence. "Okay," I said. "Where then?" In the far glass, beyond my reflection, something crossed an aisle with the slow certainty of someone who knew the space by heart. A person-height shape, edges soft with grow light. Not taking the store's light, carrying its own. It paused by the lot door and lifted an arm. Not a wave, a bar across a lane. The hose tightened across the threshold by an inch. "Got it," I said. "Not that door." The figure moved again. Plants pivoted as it passed. It stopped by the shipping gate where pallets come in. The gate was chained. The kind of chain that leaves a memory in your hands if you carry it long. My cart rattled toward it by a path I wouldn't have found without being shown. A hanging basket let go and smashed on the concrete where I would have been if I'd taken the shortest line. Soil exploded into a brown halo. There was a bench by the gate with Sharpies on strings and a tray of plastic plant tags. A few were filled in the same neat hand. Date, 10/17, 10/17, 10/17. I didn't check my phone. Pinned under the bench leg lay a plastic name badge, face down in spilled perlite. I pried it up. Evelyn, Garden Center. The photo was faded, the smile practical. "Evelyn," I said, because names are handles. "I just need to go home." The chain moved, not enough to open, just enough to make its own small weather. Metal chilled my palm when I touched the lock. Inside the store, someone walked past with a broom. I shouted. They didn't turn. When I stopped, I heard a motor idling beyond the wall. A truck in the loading bay, late, or I hoped that's what it was. The figure lifted its arm again, barring, and the long-handled tools tipped forward and settled, like they'd bowed and agreed to wait. I backed away. The path cleared in gestures. One rack edged back. A hose remembered it was a circle. I followed the route the room offered. By the store-side gate, the help light blinked red on its own. Twice, like somebody remembered my button press. The kid hurried up with keys jangling. He wrestled the gate an inch and peered through. "Sorry," he said. "We didn't know anyone was—" "Just the one bag," I said. He got the gate high enough to slide a cart under. I heaved the soil through. He took it without making me explain the broken pot or the wet line, or why the tools leaned like a guard. As he rang me up, the woman with the money drawer squinted toward the glass. "Did you move those baskets?" she asked. He shook his head. I didn't answer. The receipt printed $0.00. He frowned, tried again, sighed, and tore it anyway. "System's weird," he said. At the bottom, where the barcode should be, a glossy black rectangle reflected the gate. "Keep it. We'll fix it in the morning." I pushed into the main store, then out to night. The lot air felt thin after the greenhouse. I loaded the soil and sat with my hands on the wheel, listening for a motor where there wasn't one. When I looked up, the greenhouse glowed like a lantern. Between reflections, I could see into the aisles. Near the shipping gate, a person height glow paused as if making sure I was looking. I lifted the receipt without meaning to, like a wave. The chimes answered with one polite note, though the air was still. My phone finally found signal and buzzed. "Don't forget the rosemary. If it starts raining, wait. You okay?" "Got it," I typed. "On my way." Before I pulled out, I wrote a second message I didn't send. "Tell Evelyn I said thank you." At home, I planted the rosemary by porch light. The soil smelled clean, storm sweet. When I folded the receipt for the drawer, someone had written neatly across the bottom in pen I didn't own. Paid. I slept with the window cracked and dreamed of leaves turning to look. Not unkindly, just making sure I found the path that didn't break anything. In the morning, on my way to work, I stopped for a watering can and, without thinking too hard, left it on the garden center counter with a sticky note. For Evelyn. The chimes answered the door behind me like agreement.